Well, I'll start off with when I was a baby, and this is long before I could remember, the famous lightning bolt that hit our house and came through the wall. And I was fortunate to not get killed with that lightning bolt in Salt Lake City, when I was in the crib. Okay, that was just.
So Salt Lake City. Let's start. Maybe that'll be our framing, our first section here. Salt Lake City.
Yeah, right.
I'll put born in Salt Lake City.
Mm-hmm.
So lightning bolt.
Okay. Yep, lightning bolt.
Do you remember anything like you were a baby, so you don't remember this yourself, but your parents told you that happened, or how?
Yeah, my parents told me. Now I wouldn't remember that. I was a baby infant in a crib.
What do you know about that? Like, what happened? Like, what you were apparently in your crib, and
a lightning bolt came right through the wall of the house, and didn't hit me or kill me, but that was a rather close call.
Yeah. Okay.
And the other thing that happened when I was in the crib was a rat.
Mm-hmm.
We were in a very humble part of Salt Lake on 21st East, and so I guess rats and vermin were not uncommon in that area, and so a rat somehow got up into my crib and took a chunk, out of my jaw.
Mm-hmm. Do you still have a hole there in your?
Oh yeah.
In your jawbone?
Sure, you can feel it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't remember that obviously either.
No.
Uh-huh. Do you have any memories of Salt Lake City when you were a child? Like, do you remember anything about Salt Lake City at all when you were a child?
Not really. No. But my memories of Salt Lake City began with our more or less annual trips from Denver and Chicago. Well, no, not Chicago, but Denver at Christmas time to visit, to go celebrate Christmas in Salt Lake with our families. So that was always a big event, and scary because it was, of course, wintertime, and I remember very vividly the anxiety and worry going across Wyoming, these terrible storms, to get to Salt Lake.
Mm-hmm.
That was we of course we had a good time with our cousins and everything when we got there, but I remember my dad, he had a hard time with us kids. We didn't have anything. I don't know if we even had a radio in the car, but the fuss we were doing in the car really bothered Dad. So it was the trip was to get to Salt Lake was not pleasant.
Mm-hmm.
It was a little scary.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's jumping forward to when you're in Denver already. You said Chicago. Tell me about Chicago. What do you remember about Chicago, or what have you learned about Chicago when you were there?
I'll have to look through that. I don't see anything about. I was still so young when we were in Chicago. It was during the war. We had moved. Oh, wait a minute. Let me get this. We moved to Denver. I think I was about 3 or 4 years old when we moved to Denver. Chicago came much later. Chicago, Washington D.C. Those events were when I was a little bit older.
Well, you left on your mission from Denver, from Aurora.
Yeah.
So moving from Salt Lake to Denver at 3 or 4 doesn't sound quite right. I think you went to Chicago, and then Washington D.C. and eventually ended up in Denver. Or did you go from Salt Lake to Denver, and then from there your family moved to Chicago, Washington D.C., and then back to Denver?
Well, let me think. The family moved while I was in Brazil.
To Salt Lake.
And they moved. No, I'm trying to think if it was to Salt Lake or
because your dad was called as a General Authority.
Yeah, that would have been to Salt Lake. Sure, that's logical. So that was a big transition, big deal.
Yeah. So do you remember? You don't remember anything about Chicago itself? Like any experiences you have, any memories you have of when your family was in Chicago?
I just have fleeting memories of the train or the public transportation system in Chicago. The elevator. So it was.
The L.
Yeah, the L. You heard of the L?
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what I couldn't think of. Yeah, the L was the mode of transportation there. You got to understand, during these years, well, this is before my dad became a general authority. They were very lean years, economically very lean years when we lived in Salt Lake. That's why we lived in a bad part of town. And,
in Chicago?
No, in Salt Lake.
Salt Lake.
Yeah. Let me look at my notes here. Okay, let's see. Well, I'll read what I've got, then you can maybe decipher what needs to be or should be included here in this. When we moved to Denver, we first moved to South Denver, quite a ways from the airport where my dad worked. And when we were in South Denver, I was out in front of the house with Joanne, and she was 5 years younger than I, so she was still a pretty young kid. And a great big dog came charging at her, and I ran away. I ran away and left her to get killed by the dog. And I'll never forget how bad I felt. I've ever since I think back on that occasion and think, oh my gosh, how could I have done that? She literally could have been killed by the Saint Bernard.
The Saint Bernard.
Yeah. And I know that we went to this, maybe not germane for, as I understand that house, I guess the folks bought that house in South Denver, knowing that they eventually would have to move out towards Stapleton Airport in East Denver. But anyway, it took a big, terrible financial loss because of having bought that house in South Denver. And I don't know if my folks ever recuperated from that major loss from that move.
So they moved there probably from Washington, D.C. or Chicago. I think it was Washington, D.C. because your dad was there during the war, right? World War II.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering if you guys moved to Chicago after that, and then from Chicago to Denver, and then while you're on your mission, they moved to Salt Lake because your dad was called to be General Authority.
Yeah, that's probably the sequence. Let me look. And when we moved to East Denver, it was by the Colorado Women's College, just down the street from where our house was. And we were in a brand new development, which is now old and decrepit years later. But it was, I remember playing as a young person in the big mounds that were created during this big construction period in East Denver. And I had a good time playing in that area. Then one event that stuck in my memory was once when some kid was bullying me, a big kid was bullying me, and my brother Vic came to my rescue, saved me from destruction from this bully kid.
Was that at the elementary school, or do you remember what school that might have been at?
It would have been elementary. Yeah, it would have been elementary. Yep. Okay, the trauma of my young life was having to give up Kitty, who is my cat. We called her Kitty. Mm-hmm. When we moved to a duplex in East Denver, they didn't allow pets, and so I had to give up that cat, and that was by far the most traumatic experience I had in my younger days. Kitty.
I think there's a picture of you, Dad.
Yeah, I think
Find that picture of you holding a cat.
I think you're right. There is some picture someplace. Okay. We moved to 4141 East 18th Avenue in Denver. Right by, there's a major parkway, sort of like in Altaloma and California, sort of like what's the main drag that going down through Upland now?
Euclid,
yeah. It was parallel, analogous to Euclid, because
is it Colfax?
Colfax was parallel to it, but not. It was. It must have. It was. I think it had to be on 16th Avenue, because our address was 4141 East 18th Avenue. So that means that that big 16th Street that went from our East Denver location all the way downtown to Denver. That's what that was. I had a friend. Let's see. There's a West family. West family was in our ward, and the only friend I had was one of the West boys. I don't know what was his name. I don't know. Remember his name. And Vic, one of Vic's good friends, was the older West boy, roughly 2 years older than Vic and older than me. Anyway, that family was very, and it was just they only lived a block or two at the most from our duplex at 4141 East 18th. I went to junior high school at Smiley Junior High School. Don't remember much about that. I think what I remember about that, I felt pretty proud of myself for being able to work in the AV activity, running projectors at school.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was a big deal. During that general period of time, all of us in the ward and the stake were worked on this construction of the Denver, Colorado Stake Center. That was in the days when that happened. You know, they don't do that now, because of litigation possibilities. But anyway, we all felt good about contributing to the construction of that stake center. And that's the reason, I guess that's the reason I've had this inborn desire to go back and see that stake center, although I've been there at least once after marriage and BYU and whatnot. I did get back there for some, but anyway, that's I consider that stake center sort of a home base. That's where Mom and I had our wedding reception long after I got back from my mission. I remember that well. I remember.
So there's a picture of you in a wedding. There's a picture of you and Mom at your wedding reception. I don't know if it was that one in Denver or another one, maybe in Salt Lake.
I don't know which it was either. I remember the picture. In fact, I think there's a picture over there.
It's a picture of Mom over there, but not of the reception itself.
Oh. Well, anyhow, I noticed that my dad wrote his anxiety as a youth in Cardston, Alberta, Canada, his self-consciousness he had severe what was it? I just wrote about it here. Can I write on this? Oh, I guess the other page. Oh, what was it? An illness that caused him to not be able to participate in athletics at all.
Polio?
Wasn't polio? No. Dang. it caused him to not be able to even do church sports, and so he was considered a sissy. It really bothered him, and he was embarrassed for not being able to, during the majority of the year, he could not participate in athletics and sports. And whereas at that age, in his younger years in elementary, junior, and senior high, the thing to do would be to involve in somehow involvement with sports, and he couldn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I often wondered that, because especially when after mission age and whatnot, most guys in the church tend to at least play church basketball.
Mm-hmm.
And I often wondered, why didn't my dad ever engage in those kind of things? And when I was rereading this book, I found out that was the reason, because he had to. What in the world is it? Oh, well, let me. I gotta get that. Let me send this right towards the beginning here. I maybe took it. Oh man. Fevers. Give me some names of fevers. Scarlet fever. I think, yeah, I believe it was. I could, if you need to know it for the record, it's in the first pages of the book. Because of his scarlet fever, he felt like an outcast. He had a big inferiority complex and was poked fun of. He was really. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. So can you tell me about Denver a bit more? Do you remember what you had a car in Denver, right?
Yeah, my first.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was a big event in my life, buying my first car. I think my first car must have been the Model A, 1929 Model A, and I thought it was. I bought that car and then decided to make it really look slick, because Model A was, even back in 1955, 56 during high school, it was fairly much of an antique car. To jazz it up, I took the roof off of it. Maybe you know that. Took the roof off of it and took the fenders off. We thought we were really cool. We'd driving down the main drag, Colfax Avenue in Denver, the kids in the back seat standing up through the roof.
No seatbelts, huh?
Oh no, they didn't have seatbelts those days. And so like I say, took the fenders off, threw them away, and then I found out that it was illegal to not have fenders, so I had to go to a junkyard, buy a set of fenders to put back on the Model A.
So how did you take off the roof? Did you get a plasma cutter and cut it off?
I don't know how we removed it physically. I don't know how we did it. If we did it with a hacksaw or.
What about rain and snow?
Didn't think about those details. I did when the winter came on, because, boy, during the years that I had that Model A, our house in Aurora, or let me say the Bradford house, where your mother, future mother, was between our house in Aurora and the Stapleton Airport, or not. Well, that's not. Between our house and the elementary school, where I worked in the morning before school and afterward as a custodial helper.
As a teenager.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in the winter, driving from our home out there in Hoffman Heights, it was called, to work, froze my tail off. I didn't have a heater to begin with, and the floorboards had holes in it. So as I was driving along in the winter, it was just freezing cold. Frozen my tail.
Maybe your hatred of cold weather started there, Dad.
It could be. It's very, very possible, because that was miserable. So I had that car for at least 2 years, and I bought it for $35 and sold it for $35 2 years later. But then when I bought my 1948 Chevrolet, 4-door Chevrolet with heater, oh man, I thought it was coming. I mean, I really felt important to have that. And that's the car that I dated your mother in.
That's probably the one that there's a picture of Rob and I think Bev, maybe Rich Bradford washing one of your cars. I think that's probably it.
That would be it, yeah. I'm sure that would be it. Anyway, having a car with a heater and no holes in the floorboards and a radio, I thought I was in the seventh heaven. And like I say, Mom and I, we used that in our courtship years before my mission.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a big deal.
Yeah. Do you remember much about high school, Dad? Whether courting with Mom or...
Oh, what I remember about high school is not real uplifting or pleasant. I don't think I had one friend, I think, in those years when I was in junior high and high school. A young kid that had what was that condition? He would have convulsions periodically. He was epileptic.
Mm-hmm.
That's when we lived at a duplex at 4141 East 18th Avenue. And that would scare the heck out of me. If you've ever seen a person in severe convulsions, you know, it's scary. But anyway, Jimmy was his name. So that was one of my big recollections of that duplex that we lived in for I don't know how many, a few years. And one of my duties in those years, we heated the house with coal, burning coal. And so one of my duties was to shovel the coal from the storage room, I guess, into the furnace to heat up the house. That was a big duty. Trying to think. I guess I should say our bonding with our cousins in Utah was very significant. See, since we were really young, when the war got started, and we were subject to go back to live in Washington, D.C. and Chicago during the war, Vic and I didn't have, maybe he had some friends. Well, he did have a friend, and the brother of my friend who was the West family. They had a son just the same age as Vic, and my friend was the same age as me. And the West family was our main attachments to the church, to that ward. They were very, very instrumental and very important family to us.
Mm-hmm.
Sister West was I think she was an accomplished pianist and played in our meetings.
Mm-hmm.
One of my recollections of those years, I'd call them the duplex years. My friend and I, Jimmy, was that his name? No, Don West was his name. We were just a block or two from the big, huge Denver City Park, and so we would ride our bicycles through the park and they had some outdoor facilities for concerts and whatnot. And that was a big activity, important activity for Don and me. I'd give anything to know where he is now. I'd like to communicate with a few of these people, but he might be long since dead for all I know.
Yeah. So let me get this straight. When you moved to Denver, you moved to a house in South Denver.
First one for a short time.
And then there was a duplex you just mentioned.
Yeah.
Was that? Do you remember if that came after the South Denver house?
Yeah, it did.
Was there another house after the duplex?
The duplex. I think from the duplex, if I recall correctly, I think from the duplex is when we moved out to Aurora, which was just being built. I mean, the houses were in construction when we moved to Aurora in about 1950, probably 52, 53.
Right before you started high school is when you moved out there?
Yeah.
You took me to a house in Denver that you lived in when I moved from, I think, Monterey, California to Manhattan, Kansas. When we were driving across the 70, I think that was when we did it, that we stopped there to see your one of your houses.
Yeah, that'd be the 912 Salem Street house, a little cracker box house, brick house in Aurora. And it was that was sort of an interesting experience moving there. Like I say, it was economical part of the general area. But when we lived there, I didn't think anything about it. They're little cracker box houses, cookie cutter houses in that entire neighborhood. In fact, I remember our bishop just lived 2 or 3 blocks from us, and I babysat the bishop's kids quite frequently. But I thought it was a great neighborhood. But one of my good friends that I played basketball with, church basketball, still lives there 50, 60 years later. He has his own painting company, so I don't think he's destitute, but Dick Motto is his name, Dick and Sharon Motto. So they had lived there probably at least 40 years when Josie and I made that visit to the fast food place. And we stopped and visited Dick and Sharon Motto, wonderful people. And he, in the meantime, in the intervening years, he was put in the stake presidency, and but they were just really stalwarts, very stalwarts. They had some medical problems. I forget what. That doesn't make any difference. And they were the only ones that from our era, from earlier when we lived there with Dad and Mom's family, that we were aware of, that we knew were still alive and kicking. I've occasionally, very occasionally, I've given them a call, see how they're doing. I would like to. Well, without a driver's license, it's not going to happen. I was envisioning a trip through Denver on the way back to the church's historical sites. I was planning on stopping at Dick and Sharon's place there in Aurora, but that's not going to happen now.
Did you play any sports in high school, Dad? Did you do any extracurricular activities?
I wrestled for a year or 2, and that's it.
Is there anything about that? Any matches or any practice or any coach or teammates?
No, I was sort of a laughing stock, because whereas most of the guys on the wrestling team were all the time working to reduce their weight, to get down to weight, I was trying to get mine up to 95 pounds. That was my challenge, to eat enough to get to 95 pounds. So I was really a scrawny kid.
That's probably where Seth gets it, and I got it.
Yeah, it could be. But it was, I really feel bad. I shouldn't feel bad. I don't remember that my parents or anybody, my brother or anybody, ever having attended a wrestling match that I was involved in. But maybe they did, and maybe I just forgot. Doesn't make any difference. I really feel bad with Mike Brown. I don't remember. Oh, no, it was Glenn. Glenn played basketball at Altaloma High School, and I don't remember going to a single lousy game that he was involved in. And I think it just plagues me to think that I didn't have more interest in my son to not attend. And it's possible I did, with my memory loss. Maybe I did go. But as far as my memory tells me, I didn't pay attention to Glenn's career there at the high school.
Yeah. Well, you went to Allen's and my tennis matches. I'm not sure if you ever went to cross country. I did cross country and tennis all 4 years.
I know you did. Yeah, I remember. I do remember that involvement with you guys, you younger kids.
Yeah, we appreciated that. Alan's expressed that as well many times. Okay, so Denver. You've already told this to me. I recorded on FamilySearch.org. But do you want to take another crack at the infamous dead porcupine story?
Oh, yeah.
Bradford's house?
Sure.
Porch?
Yeah, that's I could never live that down. During those years, when that happened, I was working as frequently as I could way out in the ranch. It was about 50 miles outside of Denver on Tom Nader's ranch.
East of Denver.
Yes. And coming back at night, and I guess Stan Jameson must have been with me. I'm sure he was. We were coming back late at night, and on the old dirt road, we saw this porcupine walking across the road, and we had our rifles with us for some reason, which I don't know why. We didn't hunt.
In the story that you told that I recorded on Family Search is to kill the bunnies who would eat the crops.
Do what?
To kill the rabbits who would eat the crops. You have guns to kill the rabbits who are eating the crops.
To kill the rabbits that were... Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, maybe that's why we had the guns there. I forgot that detail. Anyway, by the light of our headlights, I shot that poor porcupine and thought that would be so cute to take it up and put it on the porch of the Bradford porch. And so when they opened up their front door, this ugly-looking monster was right in front of them. And Brother Bradford, Mom's dad, would bring that up so often. That was a big issue.
Yeah.
Richard remembers it well too. It was a landmark event.
Yeah, we do stupid things for love, huh, Ned?
Yeah, well, years later, like now, I would feel like, what's a stupid, inhumane thing to do? Kill some poor porcupine?
Yeah.
But anyway, we weren't concerned about the environment in that at that time. We just thought it'd be really fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what else, Dad? Is there anything else? Any other memories from before your mission?
Well,
whatever city, whatever neighborhood, whatever house.
The big thing was CSU, in Fort Collins.
That was before your mission. 2 years before your mission, you went to CSU, Colorado State University. Fort Collins?
Yeah. Stan Jameson and I went there. His grandparents, as I recall, lived in Fort Collins at the time, so he was able to stay with his grandparents.
Did you room with him?
I roomed with him at BYU.
Oh, later at BYU, not at CSU.
Not at CSU. No, I didn't room with him. I roomed with a kid in the dormitories at CSU because I was working in the cafeteria at CSU, and what is that kid's name? Smith was his last name. What was his first name? Didn't make any difference. He and I roomed in the dorm there, and since so long ago that the dorms have been torn down, now I found out.
Yeah, talking about that, they tore down Deseret Towers.
I know they did.
And put up more like apartment-style living for students.
Yeah, I sure wouldn't have voted for that because I thought those heritage halls were in great shape. Very nice.
They were 50 years old by the time they tore them down, though. But
yeah, I don't know what the age would have anything to do with it.
It could be safety, earthquake.
Could be, yeah, I suppose.
Anything else, Dad, before your mission? Tell me more about CSU. Your first 2 years of college, you went to Colorado State University. Tell me more about that. That
was real important. I went there because I was bound and determined to be a rancher. Based on living out on the ranch. I thought that was
working on the ranch.
Working on that, yeah. And I worked there for like maybe 9 months before my mission. I lived there and worked there. I didn't even.
You didn't go home that much?
No, not prior to my mission. But anyway, that the CSU was an important experience. Because we had it was called the Deseret Club on campus.
Is that an LDS club?
Yeah, it's called Deseret. I think we call it Deseret Club. Yeah, we had our basketball team. We competed in the intramural leagues, and we even went up to Wyoming to play games with that Deseret Club.
That's awesome.
And so that was a pretty closely knit group of kids together, all students at CSU. And Lot Smith, he's one name. He was a veterinary student, soon to graduate in veterinary medicine. I'd give anything if I could find out about some of these people that were there contemporarily with me.
Mm-hmm.
Anyhow, so the Deseret Club was my social focal point.
Yeah.
Of those years at CSU, and of course we were anti-BYU. When BYU, we were the same athletic conference.
Mm-hmm.
So when BYU would come to play us in basketball or football, we were really anti-BYU.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember one thing stuck in my mind here and my small memory bank was how embarrassed we were with the basketball. I couldn't say about football because down on the field you couldn't hear what the language was, but we were so embarrassed with the antics of the BYU players. There were foul mouths, and they almost called the game because of the BYU sportsmanship, lack of sportsmanship. And I remember feeling so terrible. All of us from the Deseret Club were sitting there together in the field house during at least one game, maybe more, and just embarrassed to tears with the behavior of these athletes.
Mm.
And so later on, long after the mission, and after Mom and me and even Josie became avid BYU fans, things had changed drastically. The coaches and the whole thing was quite different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember the feelings, chagrin and embarrassment, the way those guys were acting and behaving and talking on the court. Anyway, such life.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. I could mention. Let's see. I think our landlord. Oh well, first of all, during my freshman year, I lived on campus, working in the dormitories and in the cafeteria, and for part of my keep. Then the second year, I moved into a basement of a house right across from the campus. And that might have been an LDS family. I'm not sure if they were LDS or what they were. It doesn't make a difference. But anyway, bottom line is that my roommate there, Shawcraft, I think it was, he was an engineering student, real smart in math, and he got me through college algebra. I don't think I ever would have got through an algebra class because I'm not a real good scholar in math.
Mm-hmm.
But he really was instrumental in getting me through that. This is probably my sophomore year before going off into the mission field.
Mm-hmm.
And there was sort of a pretty girl. I think she lived right next door, Evelyn something or other. And she sort of caught my attention, but of course I had my mind more on your mother than anybody, so I never had any romantic inclination toward this girl. But I remember this girl was real tall and attractive and active in the church, and nice personality.
Mm-hmm.
That made my BYU years, not just she, but
Your CSU years or BYU?
I'm at CSU.
Okay. Because you met Mom when you were about 16, was it?
Yeah, I had a driver's license, so I must have been 16. She was 3 years younger.
Do you remember what car you had at that point? Was it the Model A or the Chevrolet?
Would have been the Chevy. Yeah, I think the Model A was before I got going with her. Yeah, I'm sure it was, because I felt like I was driving a Cadillac with that.
When can you get a license? Because if you're 16, you had the Model A for 2 years. When can you get a license? What age did you get your license, your driver's license?
16.
I wonder. You mentioned 2 years of having the Model A, and so I'm wondering if it was the Model A that you had when you met her.
I guess it could have been, but then again, I'd be a little surprised because it was, like I say, in the wintertime, the floorboards had big holes in them. It was colder than an ice box. And of course, there was no radio. and I'd had to put a roof back on to make it legal and put the fenders back on. It's possible that I still had that car when I got going with Mom. Of course, Mom was 3 years younger than I, and they moved from Salt Lake after my parents' family and us moved to Denver.
She moved from Salt Lake. Mom moved from Salt Lake to Denver, right, at age 13.
Yeah, I think that's right.
So
yeah, in fact,
55. That is 55.
Yeah, and it was. Now I look back on it, it's rather unusual that we started dating long before the church recommended serious dating. So by the time we got
serious dating, you mean?
Huh?
Recommended not serious dating.
Yeah, well, their position against serious dating was negative. That was bad. Anyway, it was later on I realized, well, boy, I sure robbed the cradle. How did I get away with that? I don't think we were, before my mission, I don't think we were paying much attention to the church standards in terms of age of dating.
Yeah. So the standards of the church were that they discouraged steady dating.
Oh yeah.
As teenagers.
Yeah. Especially before age 16, I think that was a taboo.
Yeah.
But I could drive right now. I could drive right to her parents' house, close to the school where I worked in the mornings and afternoons. That was a very significant house.
Yeah. Is that the Ross Street house? No, Ross is in Pomona.
Yeah.
What's the name of the street that the Bradfords lived on?
Oh, shoot. I'd recognize it if I saw it again, but I can't think of it right now. Verbena. That's what it is. Verbena. That's what it was. I don't remember the house number, but it was Verbena Street.
Yeah. Just
across the fence from Stapleton Airport, where my dad was working, and where Sterling Bradford was working too.
Yeah. Oh. Okay then. Well, we'll stop there and
okay.
talk more about life, some other parts of your life later.